Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna and Honorable Justice Dr. Vineet Kothari sir to kindly come on to the dais and CA Divya S to escort them. I request all the delegates to kindly settle as we begin with our keynote address. I request CA Manjunath M. Halluru, Secretary, Bangalore Branch, to introduce Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna to this gathering.
Good morning, members. I am honored to introduce the keynote speaker for this conference, Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna Madam. Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna Madam enrolled as an advocate on 28 October 1987 at Bangalore. She has practiced at Bangalore in constitutional laws, commercial laws, including insurance law, administrative law, public law, laws relating to land and rent, family laws, conveyancing, and drafting of contracts and agreements, arbitration, and conciliation. She has been appointed as additional judge of the High Court of Karnataka on 18 February 2008 and permanent judge on 17 February 2010. Her Lordship took oath as judge of the Honorable Supreme Court of India on 31st October 2021. With this brief introduction, I present before you Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna Madam. I request CA Naveen Khariwal sir to say a few words.
Morning to all the delegates. My good friend Manju has introduced Madam very well. So just to add to it, ladies and gentlemen, you will be proud to know that. Let me start with the lineage of this extraordinary personality. Her father, Justice E.S. Venkatramaya, was the Chief Justice of Supreme Court in 1989 for a period of 6 months. And at that time, Madam is, a prodigy of Sophia's school here from Bangalore. Thereafter, she shifted to Delhi. She joined the Jesus College and she finished her BA in history there. Then, she went and finished her LLB also. And you see the commitment of the personality of those days. Immediately on completion of her LLB, because her father was using that government house there as a Chief Justice, she did not practice there and came all over to Bangalore and set up her office here. She told, because my father is Chief Justice there, I will not practice there. So she came here, she joined KSV, and then, she started her practice. Fortunately, my lineage, my grandfather, late Sri Mohanlal Khariwal, was associated with Justice E.S. Venkatramaya in Bharati Vidya Bhavan. He was the chairman there and grandfather was the vice chairman there, and they spent a lot of moments, lot of the cultural programs there in those days. So they used to meet often there. Coming back to Madam again now, as Manju rightly pointed out, 2010, she took, she charge of this, she became the High Court judge here. Several judgments, it will show you the kind of person and the kind of human quality she has. You take one of the judgments, how beautiful it is rendered. She says, no child is illegitimate. Illegitimate are the parents. Child cannot be called as illegitimate. You see these three, how wonderfully, this judgment is delivered. Let me just read those 3 lines here. 2021, division bench headed by Justice BV Nagarathna held that there were no illegitimate children and law should recognize them and confer them with equal protection and rights The bench stated, listen to this language of 4 lines. No child is born in this world without a father and a mother. A child has no role to play in his or her birth. Hence, law should recognize there may be illegitimate parents, but no illegitimate children. Now, anyway, we need to come to our side now. So, what are the judgments in our side? Demonetization. This August audience need to be told, out of the 5 judges, she was the only judge who dissented with demonetization. On record is there, and naturally out of the 5, 4 are in favor, and what she told was, it is wrong, you could not have brought it in a night, it should have passed to the legal route of the parliament, place it before the parliament, then it should have come. Unfortunately, she was not in majority, and that was her dissent. Now, what lies in store in future? In 2027, just 36 days before her retirement, my Lordship, Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna, would become the first lady Chief Justice in India. And all the more we need to be proud of is the first Kannadiga who will adorn this great chair. From the city of, Pandavpura and Mandya, that's what she told me when I just went to her house, she was just telling me, my father went from Halli to Delhi. So from Pandavpura, he went to Delhi. And beyond this, I would like to end, because I don't want to stand between her speech and the audience. Last but not the least, she's blessed with 2 daughters. First daughter is Nayantara, practicing as in the civil matters in our Karnataka High Court and Civil Court. Second one is, just completed her graduation, and they'll be going to Los Angeles, flying the next week. With due apologies to Madam, after having interacted with her daughter, with due apologies again, I feel she's much better than her mother and her grandfather. And last but not the least, I would thank my chairman for having, been persistent that we need to invite her, a personality of her stature. She wanted her actually to be the chief guest for this, conference, but we could not get her because she was preoccupied in Delhi. And now anyway, she's coming to the tax bench in next 2 months. The ladies, madam, one more apology is, she told me the felicitation should be on a very, very low scale. But I am sorry, the ladies, they have refused. They told we need to felicitate our, the daughter of our soil who has gone to Delhi to become the first Chief Justice. We are going to put one Mysore Peta, one shawl, and, we are going to just give you one bouquet. That much felicitation is our right, and they have refused, madam. Thank you very much.
Over to you, ma'am. We all are very eager to listen to you.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Distinguished invitees on the dais, Justice Vineet Kothari, former judge and my colleague in Karnataka High Court and now senior advocate Supreme Court, Mrs. Divya S., chairperson of the Bangalore branch of ICAI, Sri Manjunath, secretary, office bearers and members of the ICAI Bangalore branch, I would say learned chartered accountants from Belagavi, Bellary, Hubli, Kalburgi, Mangalore, Mysore and Udupi branches of ICAI, the learned speakers who are participating in this program, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I must thank Bangalore branch of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, ICAI, for inviting me to deliver this address at the 19th state level Chartered Accountants Conference on the theme Pragnana Prayatna. I must thank Mrs. Divya as chairperson for inviting me and Mr. Naveen Kariwal for coming home and informing me about the conference sometime in June. Then it is coinciding with my arrival in Bangalore, in the sense that I coincided this with one or two other things I had to do in Bangalore. I thank Mr. Manjunath and Mr. Naveen for their kind introduction and references made to me. It gives me immense pleasure to speak to a professional community, which is one of our nation's key financial architects, whose analytical acumen and commitment, if channeled effectively, can strengthen our economy and add new horizons to our economic growth. I am informed that the ICAI was set up in 1949, and the Karnataka chapter, or the Bangalore chapter, was set up in 1962, and there are about 3.5 lakh members in the ICAI, which has played a very significant role in the nation's economy. Mostly, if you interact with the students who are pursuing chartered accountancy, they are always worried about the rigor of the curriculum and the number of attempts that some of them take to pass. The credibility of the examination system is very well known. I think the examination system for becoming a chartered accountant is much more credible than it is, I think, for law. That is an important aspect. I was informed that the ICAI Bangalore chapter has about 15,000 members, and it holds on a regular basis conferences, seminars, workshops for sharing knowledge on various contemporary topics. The agenda for this conference is very much focusing on contemporary issues. And I think if we think about it now, it is the transition to the GST regime. Today, I would like to share a few of my thoughts on the role of chartered accountants in India and the profession in retrospect and prospect. But before that, let me remember some of the doyens in the field of chartered accountancy in India and in Karnataka. Sri Gopal Das Kapadia, he is the first chartered accountant in India, and who also served for a long time as the president of the ICAI. Srimati R. Shivabhogam is the first Indian woman chartered accountant. Sri T.N. Manoharan has made monumental contributions towards restructuring corporate governance, particularly after the Satyam scandal. Sri Deepak Parekh, we all know, has made contributions for a transparent accountancy, and he is well known both in India and overseas. There are several chartered accountants who are well known in Bangalore. I will recall some of the very senior persons. I am reminded of Sri K.P. Rao, Sri S. Krishnaswamy, H.A.K. Rao, N.C.S. Raghavan, Mr. H.C. Kincha and Mr. Mohanlal Kariwal, and the entire family of Kincha and Kariwal, who form one of the oldest firms in Bangalore. Therefore, I am delighted to be before you all in this August gathering, and I must congratulate the ICAI Bangalore chapter, or Karnataka chapter as you call it, for having elected or appointed a lady chartered accountant, Mrs. Divya, as the president. This is a testament of the fact that the profession of chartered accountancy boasts of an impressive gender demographics. I hope that there will be many more women who will adorn the post of president of or chairperson of ICAI. Now, coming to the subject as such, we all know that India is a welfare state. Welfare state has to impose taxes to generate revenue for the purpose of development of the economy and the nation, infrastructure development, development of human resources, services, and the development of the economy in general. The tax law landscape in India is therefore very important and closely intertwined with the economic development of the country. The landscape has been not stagnant or static but very dynamic. It has witnessed several changes over the decades. They have been with a view to widen the tax base, to simplify and rationalize tax procedures, to modernize taxation through computerized mechanisms, enhance efficiency of tax administration, and to maintain progressivity at all levels, including the detection of tax evasion and subsequent action. I must take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of the chartered accountants all over the country for effectively adapting to the changes that have been made over the decades, thereby lubricating the transition from one tax regime to another very easy. For example, the transition to the GST regime, which is a paradigm shift in indirect taxation, has been possible because of the strong body of chartered accountants who have facilitated a quick adaptation to the new regime and to meet the demands of legislation. In this context, I must say that if GST regime has been successful till date in its implementation, in its true letter and spirit, it is because of the energy and expertise of professionals such as the chartered accountants all over the country. So therefore, it is necessary to acknowledge their role both pre and post introduction of the GST regime in India. Apart from this, we have seen several tax reforms, particularly after 1991, where India adopted what is called the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization policy, unlike the previous regime of license Raj, red tapeism, and bureaucratic obstruction. Changes have been made to the excise duty structures by introduction of Senvat, and there has been changes in the eliminating of various kinds of obstacles in the implementation and administration of taxation. Introduction of service tax in 1994 and the enlargement of the number of services has been dynamic. And of course, the GST Act of 2017 is a single legislation for the entire country, making it one taxation regime for the entire country, which is a reform in itself. Chartered accountants have proactively adapted to these changes and have helped citizens to transit to the new regime with ease. Now, coming to the direct taxation as such, I must say that as far as direct taxation is concerned, the system not only incorporates a normative and prescriptive consideration of neutrality, fairness, certainty, efficiency, but the system must promote a virtuous circle. Now, what is a virtuous circle as opposed to a vicious circle? A virtuous circle must increase the trust between the taxpayer and the tax administration. It has to achieve a dual purpose. Now, what are the dual purposes? To reinforce voluntary compliance while at the same time promote good governance. See, a taxpayer will comply voluntarily so long as he has the trust in the governance of the country or the state. Therefore, it is in this context, I must say, that the role of the CAs is significant. They can be effective catalysts in securing the circle of trust between the taxpayer and the tax administrator. The integrity of the CAs determine the efficiency and functioning of the nation's taxation system. Now, coming to the modern trends in taxation, I must say that most of the democracies are welfare democracies. Taxes are levied, as I said, for various projects and plans to be implemented for the citizens. But however, the sad reality of our economic life is that huge sums of unaccounted money is in circulation, endangering the very fabric of the economy and distorting the economy. Therefore, there are many concepts and processes involved in the present taxation regime where vigilance of the chartered accountants and auditors is very much important. For example, the concept of self-assessment carries with it the requirement of good faith practices. Particularly after the Satyam computer scam, though it is unsavory and the unprecedented and idiosyncratic ways in which it was done, the Satyam example must be a cautionary tale to all companies, auditors and authorities. In that context, it is necessary to discuss the role of the auditor in preempting manipulative practices. The duty of the CA or the auditor is to provide an independent opinion on the financial statements of the enterprise. The auditor needs to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to draw conclusions on which he or she would base opinions. The chartered accountant or auditor must demonstrate that they have exercised due diligence. Therefore, transparency in accounting is imperative to the economy in many ways. For instance, in the absence of accurate financial reporting, it would be difficult for banks to allocate funds or credit. It is the quality, reliability, and objectivity of the information which stakeholders rely upon to make informed judgments and to allocate resources effectively. Transparent accounting is critical in lending credibility to financial market transactions. Market participants, investors, and shareholders look to the community of auditors and chartered accountants for accurate information in order to ensure market discipline and foster confidence in the investors and various shareholders. A key to providing and verifying information is that the higher the quality and integrity maintained by the profession, the stronger and more resilient will our markets be. By providing the foundation for credible financial statements, the accounting profession facilitates market discipline, endangers confidence among various stakeholders, and reduces the possibility of misleading information that can disrupt the stability of the financial system. Further, moving on to the discourse of governance, I find that in the realm of financial governance or corporate governance, so to say, the country has faced with notorious scams. We all know that after the Harshad Mehta scam, the SEBI has been introduced and the appellate authority has been there. Shareholder democracy has come to stay, and CAs or chartered accountants and auditors are the gatekeepers of this new corporate world, which poses challenges as well as unprecedented opportunities. My suggestion to the ICAI is to place the norms during auditing of companies and the value systems of the companies in focus, in addition to the economic health and financial practices. The CAs need to study what the value system of the particular clients is, what is their intention, what information they are placing for the purpose of auditing. Next, the investing public in India is at present very broad, much more discerning than earlier. A crisis behind closed doors in the past decades has become a matter of broad public concern at present. Thus, the importance of integrity of auditing functions for maintaining financial stability is now well recognized. Self-regulation need not always be watertight. It could be flexible with high levels of professionalism and integrity so as to ensure increased transparency and greater accountability. The method of redressing grievances of clients against the members of the profession of chartered accountants must also be speedy, transparent, and participatory. Perception is as much important, if not more, than reality. Everything must be done to retain the faith and confidence of the people in the profession. Next, I would proceed with regard to the taxpayers and their intentions. Every taxpayer is at liberty to minimize the taxation obligation and to choose one legal method or the other as vehicle for a transaction. But when it comes to chartered accountants, lawyers, and courts, we need to look at the substances of the transactions rather than the form. The use of artificial devices such as holding companies, subsidiaries, treating shopping, and selling of valuable rights and properties indirectly by entering into a maze of framework agreements in the name of tax planning must be looked at seriously. We all know of the famous words of Justice O. Chinnapareddy when he wrote a separate opinion in the case of McDowell, where he said that, and I quote, "No one can get away with a tax avoidance project with a mere statement that there is nothing illegal about it." In this context, I must state that the proper way to construe a taxing statute by a court while considering a device to avoid tax is not to ask whether the provisions should be construed literally or liberally, nor whether the transaction is unreal and not prohibited but by statute, but whether the transaction is such that the judicial process can accord approval to it. The onus is on the chartered accountants to expose the devices for what they really are and refuse to give their approval to such subterfuges. Colorable devices must not be encouraged by the profession in the name of tax planning. Referring to the court's attitude, I must say that while dealing with taxation cases where clandestine devices are used, in Vodafone case, Justice Radhakrishnan said, and I quote, "It may seem hard that a cunningly advised taxpayer should be able to evade what appears to be his equitable share of the general fiscal burden and cast it on the shoulders of his fellow citizens. But for the courts to try and stretch the law to meet hard cases is not merely to make bad law, but to run the risk of subverting the rule of law itself," unquote. Therefore, when a transaction is shown to be fraudulent, circuitous, designed to defeat the interest of the shareholders, investors, or the revenue, the court will lift the corporate veil and examine what is the subject of the transaction. Next, we come to these bilateral treaties and how helpful and what are the pitfalls in such regimes. Bilateral tax treaties have been concluded in various jurisdictions of the world to prevent double taxation and to remove obstacles in cross-border trade in goods and services, movement of capital, and transfer of technology. I'm informed that there may be about 3,000 to 4,000 treaties worldwide. There may be more. But it is all giving rise to what is known as an abuse by way of treaty shopping. Treaty shopping typically involves an attempt by a person or an entity to indirectly access the benefits of a tax treaty between two jurisdictions without being a resident of either one of the two jurisdictions. Taxpayers undermine tax sovereignty by claiming treaty benefits in situations where these benefits were not intended to be granted, thereby depriving jurisdictions of tax revenues. Treaty shopping is not only unethical but illegal and amounts to fraud on the treaty as recognized by the Supreme Court in Union of India versus Azadi Bachao Andolan. The chartered accountants must therefore be very astute and alive to interdict any such treaty shopping arrangements. Next, we come to what are called tax havens. Many offshore companies use facilities of offshore financial centers such as Mauritius, Cayman Islands, etc. Such arrangements are encouraged, for instance, by way of double taxation avoidance agreements. But so long as there is no element of fraud, it is good. But for efficient tax planning, the individual role of the chartered accountants in this regard is very important. In order to see that it is simply tax planning and not getting into the realm of tax evasion. Chartered accountants must therefore study the substance of a transaction before approving the same rather than merely looking at the form. The courts have on multiple occasions contributed to streamlining tax administration. The message of the court is simple. Those who comply with tax laws will be treated with courtesy and facilitated to pay their taxes, and those who evade or violate tax law will have to face the consequences stipulated under the law. As chartered accountants, you should convey the same message to your clients and advise them that it is in their best interest and in the interest of the nation and governance to comply with the tax laws in letter and spirit. More importantly, CAs must themselves regulate the tax laws to avoid any conduct that would discredit the profession. Needless to specify that the CAs must refuse to represent clients who insist on resorting to unfair means. At this juncture, I must also highlight the need of CAs to embark and continue on a career-long journey of self-education. I was impressed to learn that the ICAI has encouraged research and training and has introduced continual profession education, CPE, project to enable its members to cope with fast-paced changes in the profession, particularly with the advent of technology and its changes, which has revolutionized future accounting and auditing practices. Emergence of a knowledge economy and developments in information technology has redefined trade and commerce globally. The forces of globalization have opened up numerous opportunities for Indian chartered accountants, making it necessary for them to cope with changing economic and business environment. Indian accountancy firms should take up effective capacity building measures to equip themselves to face the competition internationally. This morning I was informed that many overseas companies are using the talents and endeavors of the Indian companies to become truly global and utilizing their services, and thereby they are having global recognition. Indian chartered accountants are no less to anybody else overseas. So there must be total recognition of the Indian chartered accountants who have come up with a rigorous curriculum, examination system, and have upheld the best practices and ethics of the profession. Another aspect which I would like to highlight is with regard to financial inclusion and as to how Indian chartered accountants could spread this knowledge of financial inclusion. We have the CAs in the length and breadth of the country. They can bring about awareness to the investors, bring about financial literacy to the investors, and educate them on microfinance, other innovative initiatives of the government, NABARD, and other institutions. I can make a few concluding remarks that tax compliance requires synchronized effort of multiple stakeholders: tax authorities and the government, auditors, advisors, and chartered accountants. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes of the United States Supreme Court said, and I quote, "Taxes are what we pay for civilized society. I like to pay taxes. With them, I buy civilization." However, I find that the question which an ordinary taxpayer asks in our country is, am I paying taxes to buy civilization or to facilitate the wasteful expenditure and ostentatiousness of a few? Unless the government is able to establish that there is no ostentatious expenditure and that the expenditure is controlled, the very foundation of our tax system based on distributive justice would be eroded. In this, I must recall Justice Sabyasachi Mukherjee in what he said in Play World Electronics in 1989, and I quote, "In order to create an atmosphere of tax compliance, taxes must be reasonably collected, and when collected, should be channeled towards expenditure which is not wasteful," unquote. Chartered accountants are relevant not only in securing corporate governance, but governance in broader context too. The recent guidelines issued by ICAI on accounting of political parties are a testament to this fact, as they seek to raise the bar of the quality and content of financial disclosures, thereby bringing transparency in our political system. The onus is on the CA to understand the evil consequences of tax evasion, which are manifold. First, there is a substantial loss of much needed public revenue, and success or failure of a nation's developmental agenda is largely dependent on the ability to mobilize domestic economic resources. Second, there is a large hidden loss to the community owing to the fact that some of the best brains in the country are being involved in the perpetual war between the tax avoider and his or her expert team of advisors, lawyers, CAs on the one hand, and the tax administration and its skillful advisors on the other. Third, there is immense sense of injustice and equality when tax evasion arouses in the minds of those that are unable or unwilling to profit from it. Chartered accountants are not to act as value-neutral professionals. They are a necessary adjunct, and their acumen and integrity and objectivity is closely important to the values that we possess in our economy. This aspect is relevant when CAs advise their clients with regard to the taking forward of appeals before the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals, Income Tax Appellate Tribunals, High Courts, and Supreme Courts. CAs must advise the clients to accept the assessments and discharge their tax liability when it is due, rather than advising on speculative appeals. In this context, I must stress the importance of preserving the independence of view and integrity of the profession. To separate your client advisory role from your role as public citizens, seeking to improve the functioning of the tax machinery of the nation. Integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and due care and confidentiality must be the doctrines guiding the work ethic of the chartered accountants. I hope that every one of you shall strive towards your eternal commitment to ensure that the nation's need for revenue is fulfilled fairly and honorably. On that hopeful note, I once again thank the Bangalore branch of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for inviting me to this special address in the 19th state level conference and wish the conference all success. I thank you for your kind attention and for giving me an opportunity in sharing my views. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your expertise, advice, and words of wisdom and stress on eliminating tax evasion and avoidance and its deep impact were truly inspiring. I request
CA Manjunath Hallur to present a vote of thanks.
A meaningful keynote address by our Honorable Justice BV Nagarathna Madam is very apt in bringing out the necessity of taxation laws. As India being a welfare state, for its development, it needs to tax the citizens, and so is our direct and indirect taxes and other taxes being levied. And the role of chartered accountants in setting the laws well in line with the spirit of the law of the land, and remembering the doyens of CA fraternity who have brought laurels to ICAI, the country, and as a whole. Role of chartered accountants and as due diligence in accounting audit is very important. As an inspiration to the chairperson CA Divya and many other women chartered accountants in becoming chairpersons of branches and councils and presidents of ICAI, Her Lordship also reiterated the gender equality, democratic setup of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in this regard. Her Lordship also reiterated to chartered accountants that value system of clients need to be studied by all the auditors. Madam, as we, the chartered accountants from our training days as CA article students and the examinations we have gone through are putting our blood, sweat, tears in correcting the value system of our clients, as we have always done in the past, doing presently, and in future also will be doing. While we do the audit, we'll ensure we will uphold the expectation of the judicial system of India and the world as a whole. On behalf of all the members present here and all the managing committee members of 7 branches and Bangalore branch of SIRCF ICI, we cannot thank you more for gracing the occasion and delivering the fantastic keynote address. As Naveen Karyawal sir was mentioning, Her Lordship in her famous judgment, no child is illegitimate, but child's parents might be, also gives goosebumps to me. Madam, we are very much honored to listen to your keynote address. Thank you once again. Thank you, ma'am.
felicitating such a bright jewel at Indian judiciary system is our proud privilege. I request all the MC members of Bangalore branch to kindly come on to the dais for this wonderful occasion of felicitating Justice BV Nagarathna ma'am. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I request CA Madhavmurthy sir and CA BP Rao sir to kindly come onto the dais. And also I request CA MTV sir to kindly grace the occasion by being present on the stage while felicitating. Also, Naveen Kariwal sir, kindly come onto the dais. CA Pampanna sir. A huge round of applause as we felicitate Justice BV Nagarathna ma'am from Karnataka to Delhi. The one who's going to be Chief Justice of Supreme Court. Thank you so much all the dignitaries on the dais.